None of it is easy. But if we work together, if we summon what is best in us, with our feet planted firmly in today but our eyes cast toward tomorrow, I know it is within our reach.
Good evening and welcome to this live special edition of the Northwestern News Report. I'm Jesse Kirsch reporting tonight from Evanston as President Barack Obama prepares to deliver his 7th and final State of the Union address. I'm joined at NNN headquarters by Ashley Wood, managing editor of North by Northwestern, Dominic Burke, former president of the Northwestern College Republicans, and Quentin Heilbrunner, former president of the Northwestern College Democrats. We'll be discussing various issues with them throughout the night. But now I do want to point out that Ashley has accepted an internship with Hillary for America, so we have asked her to refrain from commenting on issues pertaining specifically to Secretary Clinton's 2016 campaign. And therefore, we have a live look at the U.S. Capitol, where members of Congress, the Supreme Court, justices, and the president himself will be gathering at the top of the hour. But first, joining us live from our Washington bureau is Isa Gutierrez for NNN. And Isa, the White House has made a point of advertising this speech as something other than the usual policy agenda.
That's right, Jesse. Here in Washington, the sense is that this speech will be one about President Obama's legacy, more of a farewell address than a typical State of the Union address. Earlier this week, he said the speech will focus on, quote, big ideas. So expect more aspirational rhetoric and fewer specific policy proposals. Here in the Medill Bureau, just blocks from the White House, we have a team of reporters working on a variety of stories, so check into medillonthehill.net for more live coverage.
All right, thank you, Isa, and we'll be checking in with you throughout the evening. But right now, let's just talk about this. It seems like it's going to be a legacy speech, but he has a year left in office. So why, Ashley, is President Obama focusing on the past tonight, it seems?
Well, I think Obama really wants to emphasize the successes that he's been having, especially as you're going into 2016. Really giving him we're in 2016, but going into the election, giving him a chance to shape what the Democratic Party should be doing coming up. And that's something that he hasn't spent as much time on. I think is a really important opportunity for him, as well as, of course, his own legacy, but something that's kind of unique in this year.
And Dominic, this being a very rhetorically based election season, you got to think President Obama is going to be pushing ideas tonight.
Well, I think the president has to push ideas because if you look at the American public's perspective of what the president's been doing, they haven't seen a lot of successes over the past 7 years now. You look at an economy which maybe is better for Wall Street but not for Main Street. You look at failures on the foreign policy realm. I think the president tonight has to highlight ideas just to show that his party isn't dead on arrival in 2016.
And we'll see what both parties are thinking. And the man for us inside is Noah Fromson tonight on the Hill. He'll be covering everything on the Hill, inside Statuary Hall, inside the chamber itself. And NNN's Noah Fromson is standing by for us in Statuary Hall right now. We're going to go live to him to get an update for what has been happening in Washington this week. Noah?
Thanks, Jesse. The Capitol is buzzing in anticipation for Obama's final State of the Union. In Statuary Hall right now behind me, senators and House members are filing into the chamber. Joe Biden just walked by, the vice president, about to get ready for the speech.
And there's really so much to talk about with foreign policy, so we're going to do our best to get to more of that later on, if not before the speech, after. Now we're going to go to another member of our NNN team in Washington. Ryan Holmes is live outside the Capitol building. Ryan, give us a sense of what the security situation is like on the Capitol grounds.
Well, the security, Jesse, is high, it's intense, and it's tight. As you walk around the Capitol building, you can see armed police officers with what look like automatic or maybe semi-automatic weapons. Looks like there are snipers on the roof of the Capitol building as well. So the security situation here surrounding the Capitol is very tight as well. One police officer I spoke with told me that every member of the Capitol Police and Secret Service will be here guarding the Capitol this evening. And as far as what security will be around the immediate area surrounding the Capitol, that same police officer told me that there's going to be about a 3-block barricade of radius north, west, south, and east on all the streets surrounding the Capitol building. And that came into play about 7 o'clock. So folks leaving the office, getting away from work, 5, 6, that was fine. Traffic was flowing then, but then at about 7 o'clock, things started to get locked down in anticipation for the president's speech.
Many of these issues, as we keep discussing, are national, if not global. And although they have that national feel, they certainly hit home with many college students, especially here on Northwestern University's campus. NNN's Eric Miller did some polling and spoke with some students to see how they feel about the president's agenda tonight.
Yeah, that's right, Jesse. I spoke with students around campus this week to see what issues mattered most to NU students. Unsurprisingly, gun control was right at the top of the list. Tonight, President Obama is expected to address a packed Congress on everything from the environment to the economy. But here at Northwestern, the issue that seems to be on many students' minds is gun control.
I definitely hope that there's some tighter gun laws, at least like on things like assault weapons.
Things that to me seem to be just reasonable and very good, especially think about gun control laws.
In an online poll of 80 Northwestern students conducted by the Northwestern News Network this week, gun control topped the list of things that students most hope President Obama will address tonight. This comes after a week of intense discussion on the topic. It was only last week that President Obama announced what he called his common sense gun safety reforms. But guns aren't the only things students have in mind for tonight's speech. Social justice issues were also important to students, as were climate change and foreign policy questions such as ISIS and the Syrian refugee crisis.
I'd really like to see him talk in a substantial way about sort of our division right now about foreign policy issues.
I think the major things for me are Syrian refugee crisis.
Of the 80 people polled, half identified as Democrats and 63 said that they believe President Obama has done a good job in office. Still, not everyone was interested in what the president has to say tonight.
I actually didn't even know there was something going on Tuesday.
For the Northwestern News Network, I'm Eric Miller. And Jesse, a lot of students were looking ahead to the 2016 election. It'll be exciting to see what our coverage is in the future.
Now we're going to take a look at some of the protocol that goes on Capitol Hill on the night of the State of the Union. So for more, here's NNN's Ryan Holmes. Ryan?
Jesse, well, before we even get to the speech, let's take a step back. On November 30th, the president has to get invited to address a joint session of Congress, not necessarily every year, November 30th, but this particular year was when Speaker Ryan invited President Obama to give the speech. Now, here's where everything starts. About 30 minutes before, members of the House will take their seat, and it's a first-come, first-served basis. And then the Deputy Sergeant at Arms will announce the President of the Senate, which is Joe Biden, the Vice President, and the Senate. They will enter the chamber as well. Then the Deputy Sergeant of Arms will announce the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, along with Chief Justice Roberts, the other Supreme Court justices, and the cabinet, as you just saw recently. The President will arrive at about 9 o'clock, and behind me, along the east entrance here of the House side of the Capitol, that's where President Obama's convoy entered the Capitol building. And then at about 9, whenever the president is ready to enter the House chamber, the House Sergeant at Arms will announce him. He comes in with an escort committee, and then the president will give the speech.
Thank you, Ryan. And now we want to take you to the House chamber. You can hear the cheers in the background. Paul Irving, the Sergeant at Arms, has announced the president's arrival. So now Barack Obama, the 44th president of the United States, is making his way down the aisle of the House chamber. We're going to take you to the House chamber now to take a look at the president as he shakes hands with members of Congress. It's going to take him quite a while to make his way down there. So in the meantime, let's talk about a few other things as we'll continue to show you the president working his way through the crowd. Several members of Congress looking to shake his hand and get a moment with the president. I don't know, maybe someone's trying to push some policy. One of those policies actually might be climate change. So we just had the Paris talks. The agreement seems to be a big deal, but how big a victory is that actually for the president and his administration, or is that really just a global victory? And you can see shaking hands with Vice President Joe Biden, a 36-year veteran of Congress, and Paul Ryan, the newly elected Speaker of the House. And you can see him continuing to shake hands with congressional staffers on the podium. We await Speaker Paul Ryan's gavel in just a moment. And now we'll leave you to listen to President Barack Obama, the 44th of these United States, give his 7th and final State of the Union address on Capitol Hill. We'll be back with you here after the speech on the Northwestern News Network. Please stay tuned. President Barack Obama delivering his final State of the Union address before Congress. We'll have South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley's GOP response momentarily, as well as reports from across our Capitol Hill team. But first, I want to turn back to President Obama's speech now and the economy. As President Clinton said, it's the economy, stupid. And as it seems like it is every year, the economy was a big focus of the speech, talking about innovation, the future of America. Issa, what were the big hits on the economy tonight from President Obama?
Well, Jesse, like most of the speech, he was unspecific. The president did spend time tonight talking about how the economy has improved. He hit back against critics saying, quote, anyone claiming that America's economy is in decline is peddling fiction, and also brought in a populist message arguing that corporations were more responsible for the financial crisis than ordinary Americans. He did call for a few generic things, including supporting companies that have, quote, figured out that doing right by their workers ends up being good for their shareholders, their customers, and their communities. The other topic he focused on was technology and stressed how using technology will be key to the U.S.'s economic future. Jesse?
Now we're going to talk about plenty more issues momentarily, but first we're going to go to NNN's Jordan Tilley, who is on the Senate side of the U.S. Capitol with Illinois Democratic Senator and Minority Whip Dick Durban. Jordan?
Thanks, Jesse. I'm here with Senator Durbin. Senator, thank you so much for joining me this evening. My first question for you tonight is if you could just give me a general response to the President's State of the Union address.
I've heard many speeches by this president. I think this was one of the best since his first campaign. There was a lot of Barack Obama in this speech. He is a terrific speechwriter. He's a great thinker. And as I listened to his construction and his message, I thought this is very personal to him.
And you've been a huge advocate for humanitarian aid to Syrian refugees. How do you feel he did addressing the conflict in that region, specifically ISIS, tonight?
He tried to put in perspective the battle that we face. It is true that ISIS is a terrorist organization, and we are determined to annihilate them and eliminate them. But he tried to make it clear to the American people and to Congress, this is not World War III. We are a powerful nation. They are not more powerful than we are, but we've got to focus on eliminating them as a threat. He also reminded the Congress that we cannot send troops into every country in trouble around the world, and we can't be doing nation building every time a nation starts to unravel. These are the words of a president who I'm sure has been asked many times to consider that possibility, and over 7 years has tried to do it in the right way.
And turning now to gun control, I know that's an issue that hits close to home for many Americans, especially Americans in Illinois, specifically Chicago. How do you feel the president did addressing gun control, and what do you think still needs to be said?
It was about 10 days ago, and we got a call from the White House, and the president asked me to join a group of members of Congress, and he laid out his plan on gun control, his executive action. And he said at the time, I'm going to announce this now because I don't want it to get lost in a litany of issues in the State of the Union. So rolling this out 10 days ago separately, I think was the right approach to it. And it shows the seriousness of this issue, not just for Chicago, which had more gun deaths than any other city in America, but also for the nation. What is happening with 30,000 innocent people dying every year from gun violence is unacceptable. And we have got to find common sense ways, consistent with our Constitution, to keep guns out of the hands of convicted felons.
Great. And finally, turning now to the sentencing reform legislation that I know President Obama kind of threw a mention to. You're highly involved in that. Why do you think that is so significant?
I'm the lead Democratic sponsor. Senator Grassley, Republican of Iowa, is the lead sponsor of it. So it's truly a bipartisan bill. The president used it as his first example of something we could do this year, and I know he feels very strongly about it, as I do. This is not only the right thing to do to make sure that our laws on incarceration are fair, it could reduce a prison population and leave us resources for safer neighborhoods and crime prevention, which is important for our future. It also sends a message of justice. The many minorities in America who are overrepresented in prison populations don't think anyone notices. We do. We want to make certain that the sentencing for violent criminals continues to be strong and tough. But when it comes to sentencing for other crimes, let's be smart about it. They don't have to serve 20 years or 15 years. They can have an opportunity to turn their lives around in a much shorter period of time.
Great. Well, that's all the questions I have for you tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Jesse, back to you.
And Issa, like we expected, we've talked about it a lot. This speech was very broad, but the education issue seemed to get a couple specific policy proposals, didn't it?
That's right, Jesse. The president focused on education when he talked about issue proposals. He said, quote, "We should build on that progress by providing pre-K for all, offering every student the hands-on computer science and math classes that make them job ready on day one. And we should recruit and support more great teachers for our kids," end quote. Jesse, it'll be interesting to see if any of these proposals get any traction this year. I think we can expect House Republicans to oppose these measures and instead call for more local control of education. Jesse?
All right, thank you, Issa. Probably another part of this that could be divisive is the issue of student loans. So let's listen in on what President Obama said tonight about student loans.
No hardworking student should be stuck in the red. We've already reduced student loan payments to 10% of a borrower's income, and that's good. But now we've actually got to cut the cost of college.
So yet another economic issue. How do we cut the cost of college, Quentin, and find a way to do it with bipartisanship support?
Well, if I knew that, I'd probably be a candidate and trying to change things. But in all seriousness, it's an issue that I think that both parties will have to make a lot of sacrifices on. There's a lot of controversy over the soaring costs of administrative overhead costs in college, where more and more money, and this is obviously a controversy right here at Northwestern, is going towards faculty, going towards administration, going towards, picking an example out of thin air, a large parking garage overlooking a lake versus, say, improving the situation of a college's mental health facilities. When, to really bring it back home, we have over 2,000 Northwestern students who go to counseling here, and yet CAPS is notoriously understaffed, while meanwhile we're building many large new complexes that, in the eyes of many college students, only are there to impress potential donors. And I think changing some of that culture will be incredibly important, as well as changing, of course, the way that government acts with higher education.
Now we're going to go to Alex Letterman for NNN, who is on Capitol Hill and was able to get an interview with Congresswoman Cheri Bustos of Illinois.
I'm joined now by Congresswoman Bustos. Thanks so much for joining me, Congresswoman.
Thank you.
And so you just mentioned this to me, actually. You were a journalist for 17 years before becoming a Congresswoman. So now, as a journalist watching this speech, what's your evaluation from that point of view outside of the political landscape, do you think?
Well, like as if I were giving commentary or if I were actually covering it. Now, two different things. If I were giving commentary, I'd say thumbs up, A+. I thought it was a great speech. The fact that it's the president's final State of the Union during his presidency. As a Democrat, I was very proud of him. So if I were covering it, I think my lead would be that the president's talking about the future, focusing on our children, our grandchildren, and looking ahead, and really saying, let's work together to solve our nation's problems.
Mm-hmm. And he had 4 key points that he was hitting on, particularly the economy being one of them. That's an issue that's important to you. So in general, of the issues he touched on, what do you think really struck home in this speech?
Well, I have focused from day one in my own congressional district in the northwestern region of Illinois on jobs and the economy. He talked about making sure, everything that fits into that, making sure that college is affordable, not just taking a look at student loan debt, but that college is affordable again, taking a look at that wage gap that exists out there. And manufacturing is something that is near and dear to my heart. I've got the world headquarters of John Deere in my congressional district, the world headquarters for Caterpillar. We have major aerospace manufacturing, and we've got to ready that workforce for this next industrial revolution. And the president talked about that. So I was very pleased with what he did address, and I think first and foremost, I would rank jobs in the economy as number one.
All right, Congresswoman Bustos, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Now we're going to go to another interview from Alex Letterman, who has set Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, again of Illinois.
I'm joined now by Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, of course, our representative from Evanston. And Congresswoman, you've now seen every single State of the Union from President Obama, as well as all of them from President Bush before him.
That's right.
How do you think this State of the Union stacks up?
You know, I think Barack Obama proved today what an inspirational person that he is. I think that his vision of what makes our country strong was so human and so true. For example, saying that when in the political debate that Muslims are demonized, this doesn't make our country stronger. That what countries around the world admire about us is our diversity, and that we have to guard against breaking down into a kind of tribalism in our country. And he also was very specific about how we can make our democracy stronger, that the kind of gerrymandering where districts are set so that politicians pick their own constituents by setting the lines, all the money that's in politics, and that we need to make voting easier, not harder, which unfortunately we are seeing around the country. You know, I was disappointed when the president said, the United States is the most powerful country in the world. The Republicans didn't stand. I mean, is that somehow not something that they want to believe anymore? He was saying that we don't want to act as if ISIS really poses an existential threat to the United States. That's the narrative that ISIS wants. We want to say that they're not representative of the largest religion in the world, Islam, but this is a band of radical people that we can and should defeat, that are a threat to the entire world.
All right, Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining me.
It's such a pleasure. Thank you.
I don't think his speech was about the Democratic Party in the end. I thought the three words that stood out most to me were just, I see you. Right at the end, talking about how so many Americans felt like they were left out and forgotten in the political process. And you get politicians paying lip service. Mitt Romney, right, talking about Main Street economics when in reality nobody thought that Mitt Romney actually cared about their lives. Barack Obama with a healthcare policy that was unpopular with Americans, and even though I personally support it, many people saw it as a large government overreach into their lives that they were unhappy about. I see you, and then that list of Americans who he spoke with and he met that to him exemplified the greatness of this country, I thought was by far the moment that took it home. I think the rise of Donald Trump, the rise of Ben Carson, the rise of Bernie Sanders, and all of these outsider candidates show that the American people on the left, the right, and in the middle feel like they're completely forgotten. And this was Obama's final moment to look out to that, what is referred to by many as the silent majority, and say, you're not forgotten, we're not ignoring you, you matter.
Well, we certainly know that you weren't ignoring us here at the Northwestern News Network tonight. That's going to wrap up our coverage of the 2016 State of the Union address, President Obama's final before Congress. For all of us here at the Northwestern News Network, I'm Jesse Kirsch saying thank you for joining us on this Tuesday evening. Good night.